Perfectionism is the belief that something is broken, so you dress up your brokenness with degrees, achievements, accolades, pieces of paper, none of which can fix what you think you are fixing. Edith Eger. Welcome to Success Reimagined. I am Dr. Amna Shabbir, your host on this journey to thrive at the intersection of ambition and wellness. In every episode, I'll help you challenge outdated definitions of success, discover practical tools and strategies for growth without compromising your well-being. I am so glad you've joined me. Let's reimagine what's possible together. The upcoming episodes of Success Reimagined will center on one powerful theme: unmasking perfectionism. These conversations are more than just discussions. They're a part of my larger book project on perfectionism, diving deep into what it is and how it impacts us. Join me on this journey as global thought leaders and high achievers share their unfiltered insights. Trust me, you do not want to miss this. Here's a sneak peek at what's coming next.
We've seen the crush of the middle class. And so we are absorbing these microeconomic forces and becoming, in the words of researchers, social conduits, passing those fears about the future onto our kids in the hopes of preparing them. But instead of preparing them, instead of trying to nurture them so that they could ride these unknown waves of the future, we are stressing them too much. We are giving them too much weight that's developmentally inappropriate. And the way that they are coping with it, perfectionism is a coping strategy. It's a maladaptive coping strategy, but it's a coping strategy.
And so this is the paradox, right? This is a paradox of perfectionism. On the one hand, you've got all this restless striving, but then on the other hand, you've got all of this burnout and this self-sabotage, and they converge to mean that perfectionists are no more successful than other people. And that's a really difficult message to spread.
It's notable that in the course of talking to people about their shame, their perfectionism came up over and over and over.
Remains a vital interest of my work is looking earlier in this educational pipeline to see what is it we're doing to kids. And it's now I'm seeing it's earlier than high school that a lot of these kind of threats to mental health are occurring, and that we're wiring their brain into fostering the development of these problematic mindsets like perfectionism, maladaptive perfectionism.
But that word human is part of the story here, that we work in systems and that the perfect outcome, the perfect process isn't fully on us, that we are part of it and that we can do our part and need to do our part, but that we are also a piece of a system that can be and is deeply flawed. We can't take on entire responsibility for that system as well.
You know, I think that when I was younger, I think it was a protection. I thought if I'm perfect, I will make everyone around me happy and I will be safe. I attributed perfection with safety.
Matt's identity was being a doctor. He knew he wanted to be a doctor at the age of 3. And I think being a doctor killed him. I'm very bold in my statement, and I know I'm being bold, but I think that if Matthew had been in a different line of work, that he would probably still be alive.
You know how they ask you what's your worst quality or what's something that you could work on, and I would be like, oh, perfectionism, because I thought that was a really good answer. But I think perfectionism is blunting our success. I was saying it to look good at that time, but now I realize that when someone strives to be perfect, including myself, I think that's the ultimate admission that you haven't accepted yourself for who you are and where you're at and where you want to go.
I did not realize until it was actively harming me that the flip side of perfectionism is that we're not very shame resilient. Now I see perfectionism as this two-faced coin where one side is the appearance that you're hoping everybody else in the world perceives, and the other side is all the shame that you're hoping to avoid feeling.
I remember that one time I didn't do very well on an essay. I spent a long time on it, and for whatever reason, I got a C on this essay. And I remember that I folded it up and I put it in my pocket, and I never showed anyone. I was so ashamed of that failure. For me, there was some personal association with, I knew I was going to fail, but that failure should be concealed as much as possible.
I'm a little guy, I'm 5'0", and I started 4 years in Division I baseball. Now that served me well at that time, the underdog attitude, I've got to have grit, I've got to have grind, and I've got to do unrealistic things. And what I realized that in business and in life, giving myself grace and understanding that it's okay to try and try again and learn. You're either going to win and or learn from those attempts where you don't win. And that's okay. And it was really for me getting over that hump of I don't need to be perfect. Good enough is oftentimes good enough.
There still is kind of an umbrella feeling of perfectionism to be that perfect South Asian person. I'm sure many of us have experienced this to different degrees. I was blessed to have kind of a household growing up that was a little more liberal, open-minded, and encouraging of myself, but it still didn't change that there were kind of community and cultural norms around certain things.
The hospital system that I worked at for just under 10 years had been acquired, and we went through organizational restructuring, and I obviously was in a role that was impacted by that restructuring. And that was both a job and a role that I loved. But it was also, when I reflect back, a job and a role that I put too much of my personal time in without ever actually getting as much back as what I was giving. It was also a job where for so long I tried to be perfect. Clearly, it didn't matter how hard I worked or how much I contributed. At the end of the day, I was just a person.
We want to make it about being human, make it about, again, setting ourselves up well for the future. How can we do that? One is having supportive leaders that are not intolerant. They are more accepting of humanity, our common humanity. And that's not at the expense of high expectations or really being oriented towards success and positive outcomes.
Traveling is a perfect example of like, I want this trip to be perfect. I'm going to plan it down to the T, the whole schedule. And then that always gets blown in the water. Flights are canceled, raid, there's a riot, there's a uprest, there's a change of plans. So you're kind of always adjusting. And if you can't be happy in that process, then you're going to go through your life just being frustrated and miserable because your plans didn't work out. And I think that overlays a lot with perfectionism.
This is just a glimpse. There are many more powerful conversations coming your way. Stay tuned as we go together on this journey, diving deeper into the truth about perfectionism. If you have not yet, please do subscribe to the show so you do not miss any of these conversations. Please also leave a rating and a review so that others can discover this easily. I so appreciate you. Thank you for being here.